Welcome to the Money and Meaning Show. I'm your host, Kanae Corder, National Certified Counselor and the world's #1 clinical financial hypnotherapist. Each week, I'll share with you the research I'm uncovering as I chronicle the search for meaning over money. My interviews, tips, and resources will help you determine what you need to get the most out of your practice and your life. Because life is about more than money. It's about meaning. So let's get into today's show. Hey there, my prosperous. Welcome to this edition of the Money and Meaning Podcast. So glad you're here. And I'm wondering if you are observing Mental Health Awareness Month. And so you probably are wondering, how do you observe Mental Health Awareness Month? So last week I talked about imposter syndrome. And maybe you've thought about it for yourself. Maybe you never thought about it until you heard last week's episode. And to me, that's how you observe Mental Health Awareness Month. You really examine or take a look at where you are mentally. Because as you know, I always ask, what's your idea of prosperity? And prosperity means different things to different people. But what I've found is that everyone wants some wellness in their life. Nobody's saying, oh, I hope I have bad health. Even if they don't want to take any control or do anything about it, they still want it. And so if you want good health, mental health is part of that good health. In fact, mental health drives physical health, believe it or not. You know how I say money is the #1 cause of stress, whether you have it or not? Well, stress is the cause of many major illnesses because stress creates, or let's say it aids inflammation. So if inflammation is present and stress is present, the stress is going to feed the inflammation in your body. You'll have cortisol pumping through your brain, your brain and your veins. And what will happen is all of the good feeling chemicals, the endorphins and the dopamine, the serotonin, all of those good feelings, they don't come through because the cortisol is high. And the cortisol is there to keep you alive because cortisol is basically saying you don't need to really digest your food. Like, not right now. You just need to stay alive. You're running from a tiger. So just stay alive. You don't need to enjoy this butterfly or anything else in the world. So just stay hyper focused on staying alive. And that's just not a way to live. Now, because of the stress, it a lot of times ends up giving us all these other diagnoses because stress and sometimes trauma, more importantly, trauma will create the stress, and then the stress will create the disease. Do you see how that connects? The trauma which came into your life probably at a really early age. It might have come later. Maybe you were in a car accident later in life. Maybe you were in a fire. Maybe you lost a job and that created trauma for you. Whatever it is, it created trauma. Your brain coded it as trauma. And it lives in your body and your brain. And it comes out as stress. And because of that trauma, there are things that trigger you. And when you get triggered, you go into survival mode. And sometimes we stay in survival mode because we're constantly triggered or easily triggered because we're not working on our trauma. I'm going to share a little bit about my mental health awareness journey. And it started at a very young age. I didn't talk for about 2 years. And when I say I didn't talk, I mean, was really, really quiet. I mean, like eerie quiet. Like where most kids would have said, Baba, cookie, whatever, like those one worders. I wasn't even doing that really. I would just like point at what I wanted Or like my sister could kind of read me and tell what I wanted, and so she would speak for me. She was older. And so I got away with that for a couple of years, but my parents started to get worried. And so they took me to the doctor because they're like, "Oh no, is she, developing slowly? Does she have something that we're not aware of? Like that the hospital just didn't catch, let's do some research, let's look into this." And so they took me to my primary care physician, a pediatrician, and his name was Dr. Parson. I remember him because he was my pediatrician until I was about 13 years old, until I switched to, more of an adult teenage doctor. And so he says, there's nothing wrong with her. She just doesn't have anything to say. And thank God for Dr. Parson, because had I not gone to him and he says, "No, don't give this kid a diagnosis. There's nothing wrong with her. She just doesn't have anything to say." It was just so profound. And it allowed me to take my time. Now, I have a grandson, most of you know that, and he is in the same position. He communicates differently than most kids do. He communicates differently than most humans do. And growing up, my daughter had him watching like the Minions a lot, and like, these characters that didn't speak English. And it is my belief that because he heard that language so much, he began to internalize it and he uses it. He speaks when he wants to, when he speaks really slowly and kind of like mimics an adult, he can then say what he is feeling and you can understand him really well. But when he talks really fast, you have no idea what he's saying. And he gets frustrated. And when he gets frustrated, he lashes out. Like he'll try and like kind of hit you, like, "No, listen to me. Just why can't you understand what I'm saying?" Like he gets frustrated. And when he gets frustrated, people around him think he's being mean. And he's not being mean. He is feeling misunderstood. And so the time that he spent here in Vegas with me, Jason and I, we just really took our time, and we took our time and we just played with him. And when we didn't understand him, we were gentle. We were like, "I'm sorry, I don't understand you. Can you point at it? Can you, draw it? Can you, just show us, like show," he calls us Nick and BB. "Show Nick and BB, what is it that you want?" So we stay really patient because I think sometimes when kids are talking, adults will tell them to like either speed it up, like, "I don't have time for this story," or maybe they'll just tell them to be quiet altogether. Or maybe they'll say, "I don't know what you're saying. Here, take this, eat this banana," or whatever. Um, and he is learning sign language. He used to know sign language when he was really young and then got away from it. And he's learning sign language again so that he can teach it. But that also means that we're learning sign language. It's something that we're dedicated to learning until he gets to a point where he can speak clearly. And I know he will, just the same way I did. And so to continue to go back to my story, so then what happened was one day out of the blue, my grandmother was leaning into my crib. I was, 2-ish years old, and she's leaning into my crib and she's like, "Kane," and blah blah blah, whatever, whatever, and she's in front of the television. And so I am leaning my head around her head so I can see the TV. And every time I do that, she moves her head in front of the TV. So I move to the other side and then she'll move to the other side. And this happened until I said, "You're bothering me." And my grandmother's like, was like the sweetest, like kindest little lady. And she's like, "Oh, okay." She didn't know what to say. Of course, this is the way the story was told to me. And so everybody in the room just started laughing. And it wasn't amusing to me. I was just giving her some facts. Like, you're bothering me. You're in my way. I'm trying to watch the television and your head is blocking it. So just so you know, this isn't fun for me. You're bothering me. Now, That's just the way that I speak. I speak my truth. I always have since I was a 2-year-old. And so I do that now at my age, at 47, I think that's how old I am. And and when you do it at this age and you're not old yet, right? At 67, at 70, I can do it because I'm like, oh, that old lady's always speaking her mind, right? But in that middle age, you don't get to do it. As a baby, you get to do it. As old, you get to do it. But when you're in the middle, you don't get to do it. And that lack of self expression leads to depression. And when you can't express yourself, you're going to get down. You're going to get frustrated, like Alec, and you're going to get stressed and eventually burn out because you want to be something you're not. You want to be honest and you're not. You want to be authentic. And then what happens? You lose yourself. And all of this affects your mental health. Yeah, that rhymed. Okay, sorry. Getting back. You know I love to rhyme. But when you lose yourself, oh, it's the worst feeling, especially if it happened really early. Like for some of you, you lost yourself when you were 5 or 6 years old because you had to become whatever it is that your parents wanted you to become. But lucky for me, my parents listened to Dr. Parson. And when he said she doesn't have anything to say, they didn't force me. They didn't go, come on, you can say it. Say bottle, say shoe, say whatever. They didn't force me. They just waited for me. They were patient. And thank goodness they were patient because that allowed me to be myself. And that allowed me to learn at 2 years old that that was okay. And to this day, my mom doesn't try to make me anybody. And I know not all of you have that luxury. As a therapist, and hypnotherapist, what I deal with the most is parent issues. And then what I deal with more than anything is mommy issues. Moms love their children so much that they try to control them because that is their version of love. Love means I'm going to control everything you do and protect you and keep you safe. They don't realize they're keeping their kids stuck. They're creating resentment. Yes, right now, you as a mom trying so hard to protect your kids, you're upsetting them and you're programming them and you don't even know it because you're doing it out of love. And guess what? That is exactly what your parents were doing. So, right now, if your mental health is affected because of all the things your parents did to you, more specifically, your mom, she did it out of love. Even if it felt completely abusive, in her brain, this was how she survived. Maybe the way that she survived was to push you away, tell you you weren't good enough. You're never going to be anything anyway. She was actually keeping you safe. Don't go out in that world trying to be something. It ain't gonna do nothing but disappoint you. You see me, don't you? I tried. I went out in the world. What did I end up? Don't do what I did. Now, she's in the way of your success, but she doesn't have to stay there. You can move her out of your brain. She doesn't pay rent in that brain. So you better stop letting her live there. And then there's daddy issues too. Now, I had them. My father when I was growing up, my father was a drug addict. And I thought for a very long time that was my story. Like my story is I have this, amazing mom, and I can't even imagine how she ended up with this guy. And he was in our lives for me for 7 years. And then they got divorced. And through that 7 years, there was so much turmoil. Like he was on drugs. So you know what strung out drug addicts do. I mean, he was addicted. So he's like stealing money from her. She's going to work. He's going on the streets to buy drugs. He was a musician. And so he played instruments, he'd make money, and then he spent it on drugs. So he wasn't even bringing money home. There wasn't ever enough. And that wasn't how she grew up. She grew up with a certain amount of money. And so it felt like, and she also had to keep that secret from her parents. Like she just married a man who is not responsible. And now, 3 children in, she's thinking, oh, shoot, I got to get out. Now, luckily, and I've talked about this years ago. I haven't talked about this in a while. He was abusive, and luckily, she did have a support system because not everybody does. And so she was able to call on my grandparents and say, I got to get out of here. And I remember the day we left. I remember that a couple of days before that, there was a fight. And this is in my brain. Remember, this is in my 5-year-old brain because that's when we left when we were 5. They got divorced when I was 7. So in my 5 or 6-year-old brain, I remember them fighting and those cast iron skillets? I remember my father putting that cast iron skillet up to my mom and like telling her like he would bash her in the head. I don't remember his exact words. And my mom is tall, 5'10", and my dad is 5'2". So she probably could have creamed him. But it was a certain amount of fear. One, she just wasn't used to this behavior. Right? This is not what she wanted in her marriage. And so she's totally shocked, and you can see the fear and the shock in her eyes. But most importantly, she doesn't know what he's going to do, and she doesn't want him to do it in front of the children. Now, this is my 5-year-old interpretation. We'd have to ask her what was really going on. But so my sister and I were like, my sister had a dime. And that's back when phone calls used to be a dime and you used to have to go to a payphone. And we were like, "Oh, we got money." And so we were going to the door so we can go and call either our grandmother or the police or somebody. And we get to the door and there was a chain on the door. You know how they used to have those chains to keep the safety. And so we could open the door, but we were too short, too little to open the chain. And we felt so bad that we couldn't save our mom. Like we were so close. We had the money, but we just weren't tall enough. So I could have gone through life with this "I'm not tall enough" story, right? But I didn't. And so we sit back at the table, we watch our mother cry and days go on. Well, something happened again. He slapped my mom, and my mom is dark, like really dark. And you could see a handprint on her face, which means he had to really have hit her hard for it to swell up her face and like bruise her dark skin. And so I remember her sitting on the bed, like the edge of the bed, and telling us to put all of our clothes in garbage bags. And he must have been high or something because he wasn't there. And so we get in the car, like we put everything. She said, put everything in garbage, in like laundry bags, not garbage bags, laundry bags. So, and she told my father, my biological father, that we were going to my grandmother's house to wash clothes. So he didn't really see what it was. We all just took our bags down, put them in the car, drove off, and around like 7 or 8 o'clock, late at night, we still weren't home. And he calls and he's like, "When are you guys coming home?" And she's like, "We're not. We're never coming back. We're done." And that was the last of like them being together and me really seeing my father. I remember one time he came back like fighting to fight her to my grandmother's house, and he said, "Give me my son. Like, I want my son." Now he can't take care of anybody. He's a drug addict. So that was just like a power move. Just, just a mess. But to my 5 or 6-year-old brain, that was what was important to him. His girls weren't important to him. His son what was important to him. Now, I could have went through life thinking I'm not enough. I'm not wanted, but I didn't. I mean, I did, but I did the work. So very early in my life, I realized that I was different, that I knew stuff that other people didn't know. And my mom cultivated that. She allowed me to be that way. I would know things about people and I just say it. And I would know things that happen. I'm like, "Oh, there's a fire," and "Oh, so and so just died," and she'll be like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I don't know." So it's like certain information I would just have. And she didn't make me feel strange, but she did allow me to know that I was different from other people. But that was okay. It was okay to be different. Never ever did she want me to be like my brother or my sister or like anybody else in the world. In fact, what my mom used to say was, "If you come in here and you tell me you did this, you did something because it was your decision and you wanted to do it, you will not be in nearly as much trouble as if you come here and you say, 'Oh, I did that because Jasmine did it, or Toy and Joy did it, or those are Kisha did it.' Those are my friends when I was growing up." And so if I was to tell my mom that somebody else told me to do it, forget about it. I was in trouble for that. Plus, I was in trouble for the thing. So she really wanted us to be individuals and have our own minds. But here's the trouble with that. When you teach your children to have their own minds, they might disagree with you. But she was okay with that. But I find that most parents aren't like that. So maybe you are having some trouble making decisions because your parents say, I told you so, do what I say. And you never really got a chance to cultivate your decision making skills. That's another thing that I work with people a lot is they don't trust themselves. And the reason why they don't trust themselves is because their parents told them what to do most of their lives. And then that really only works till you're about 12 or 13 years old. And then after that, you start listening to the outside world. So, parents, if you have 12 or 13-year-olds and you're starting to lose them, it's because it might be because you taught them to listen to the voice outside of them. And now they're doing that, except that voice isn't yours anymore. They don't want to listen to your voice now. They have friends and they have social media, maybe even teachers or the cool person in the neighborhood that they like look up to. Because there's always like a group of kids that grew up just before the your age group that your kid is in. And they're looking at those kids and they're seeing what they're doing. And it looks fun. And they're like, oh, I want some of that. I want to do what Johnny is doing. I want to do what Amber is doing. She looks like she's having fun. Oh, she's having sex. She says sex is cool. She says sex, boys like sex. She says that means boys like you if they want to have sex with you. She's not telling her, but well, then I go home and I feel used, or then I go home and I feel empty. Then I go home and I feel confused. No, that's not what you see. And guess what? Amber still feels that way at 40. Used, confused. Oh, I rhymed. That's my mental health rhyme. I'm gonna write a mental health rap. No, I'm not. But somebody should. But, but I do dream about one day doing that. Anyway, should I get back? Okay, I'm going back. So Amber is broken. And not she's not a broken person, but her spirit is broken. Her heart is broken. And it could have happened because of her mother trying to control her. It could have happened because her dad got divorced and left and never came back. Could have happened like me. The father could have said, I want my son, and didn't even pay attention to the girls. Could have been that. It could have been so many reasons. But those don't matter anymore. Now it's Amber's responsibility to clear it all up. And that's why I say I could have went through life like this, but I didn't. Because at a very early age, I took responsibility for me. But my mom empowered me with that. My grandmother empowered me with that. My grandmother loved me the way I was. She wasn't ever trying to change me. Now, would she correct me and say, yo, I mean, no, my grandmother wouldn't say yo. That would be the way I heard it. But she would say, so just imagine, I'm telling you in the way that I heard grandma say it, but grandma did not say it like this, okay? So she's like, yo, you're mean sometimes. You should be nicer. What's up with that? That's what she said. Although my grandmother was really freaking cool when she was alive, like really freaking cool. Like she knew everything about like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Eminem. She would know all the things. She watched MTV and BET and yeah, I would go to grandma when I wanted to catch up on my hip hop news. Is that crazy? Yeah. Seriously, it really truly is a true story. But that's because she was just open. She was just a very open woman. And that is the woman that I work to be throughout my life. And my mom is the same way. And I'm that same way with my daughter. And I'm, praying that she becomes that type of mother. But if she doesn't, I'm kind of laissez-faire as a mother. I'm like very laid back and, let her grow. Sometimes I put my foot down just because I'm like, hey, yo, wait, right now, you cannot do this. But that is rare that it happens that I put my foot down like that. But that's only when I see her like running into traffic. Then I'm like, pull her back. But for the most part, I'm pretty laissez-faire and just let her learn. And part of the reason why I'm like that is because my mom was like that, my grandmother was like that, but also because I adopted her at 16. She had a lot of things inside of her already that I couldn't change in just like a snap of a finger. And I was going to put a wedge between our relationship. And our relationship was way more important than me controlling her. And control is where we lose our mental health. When somebody else has control of us, we don't have control of ourselves. And Control the Controllable, our flagship guide, virtual guide, is where you learn how to take back your control. Because it's so funny. What happens is you've been taught to try and control the outside things. So that's where you put your focus. And just like your parents tried to control you, you now try to control them or your children or your employees. You can't control them. They're not yours. All you can do maybe is influence them, persuade them, but you certainly cannot control them. So then what do? You control you. I know you caught that rhyme, but I'm just gonna let it go. Yeah, you control you because that's really you have only thing you have control over. And even that is limited. Money doesn't change you. It makes you more of who you are. So who are you? I can help you answer that. Did you know that financial hypnotherapy can help you discover yourself? It's true. And what it does, even better than help you discover yourself, is to discover where you've been, your money story. You know how in our IT formula, we say identify who you are, set an intention for who you want to be, and then tame your brain to get you on the path to prosperity. Well, in order to get where you're going, you really do have to know where you're starting. And that's why I created the Life of Meaning Assessment to help you determine where you are, identify. And this is important because you'll never get where you're going if you don't know where you're starting. So many of us are going through life feeling burnout, stressed, financially overwhelmed. And you know that money is the number one cause of stress, whether you have it or not. And that's what's overwhelming us. But we can change that. And it starts with identifying. So take the Life of Meaning Assessment. Go to presidentiallifestyle.com/clarity. Because whatever it is that's stressing you out and keeping you up at night is also keeping you stuck, keeping you away from your idea of prosperity, blocking you from a life full of meaning and money. So find out how close or far you are from finding your idea of prosperity. Go to presidentiallifestyle.com/clarity. You'll be so glad you did. And of course, the link is in the show notes. So continue listening and take the assessment right after you're done with this episode. So this is not like a lesson, step 1, step 2, step 3, do this, do that, do this, pay attention to these notes. But I'm dropping little nuggets, like dropping little bombs here. I hope you're picking them up because they're going to be valuable. And just connect with my story and see if you can hear your story somewhere in there. Maybe there was a time when you weren't accepted for who you were. Maybe there was a time when you felt different than everybody else and that wasn't okay. Maybe you were teased. Maybe you were hungry, left hungry. You felt abandoned. I felt abandoned a lot because as I grew up, my mom, when she got, rid of my dad, that probably isn't the nicest way to say that. And I should tell you that my dad is off of drugs, has his own apartment, but he was on drugs for like 40 years, some very, very, very long time. And homeless and like really, really, I'm talking about Skid Row homeless, like really bad. But now he has his own place. Actually has his own money. He used to be the type of, drug addict that was always borrowing, or he would like go steal from some place and then sell that stuff and then buy drugs. Like serious drug addict, like television movie type of drug addict. But now he's like mature and like even he would lend somebody money give or lend somebody money now. Like he's in a position to do that. It's miraculous that and what's really miraculous is this man was on drugs for 40 years and still has a brain. I can have a legit conversation with this man, like super smart. I can pull out my DSM-5 and like go through diagnosis with him and because that's how brilliant he is. That's how talented. He's so super talented and super smart. But sometimes you're too smart and too talented for your own good. But he had his own trauma. His father left him. My grandfather, he left. Years. I probably saw my grandfather once, maybe twice when I was a kid. That grandfather. We had a step grandfather we saw a lot. Super nice man. He was so good to us. And years later, when I was like 21, I met my grandfather again, after all those years. And the sweetest thing he said to me, what made me love him so much, and we're so cool to this day, he's 92 now. He said, "You are such a nice young lady. I wish I would have gotten to know you." And I thought that was so cool. Like he didn't come into my life saying, "Yeah, your grandpa's here now, and I'm going to tell you what to do." And he was a business owner, and he was a smart man. He could have come in and try to like put his foot down, but no, he said, "I'm going to get to know you because you seem like a really cool young lady." And he started from where we were, not from some fictitious pretend grandpa granddaughter relationship. And I had to help my biological father, see that because I have a stepfather who I consider my father. He is the man who taught me about boys. He is the man who taught me how to drive. He's the man who showed me how a lady should be treated, how he courted my mom and was so good to her. He loves my mother. He thinks that the moon and the sun revolve around her. The sun and the moon can't work if my mother isn't. Like my mother is the world to him. And I know this. And even when, they're normal, they argue. It's not like some fantasy. I'm not only seeing the fantasy. They're normal, regular people, but he just sees the good in her. He has so much esteem for her. And you can tell because they own a business and have for a very long time. They both own their separate businesses, but there's some projects that they do together. I should say that. And there's this one project called the African Festival of the Arts that we used to do when I was young. And whenever somebody would say like, "Oh, we need somebody to do," then my dad would be like, "Oh, Denise can do that." And then somebody else, "Oh, we need someone who can do blah 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 blah." "Oh, Denise can do that." It's like, "Oh, we need somebody to do the." "Oh, Denise can do that." Like he thinks she can do anything, which is true. She can. She's like an amazing woman. But you can see the love in him because he does think that the world of her. And so he taught me that. And so I have to tell my biological father, "You were gone for a very long time. And I built this relationship with this man who taught me so much. And I see him as my father. That's who will walk me down the aisle if he wants to, but not you." It's hurtful for him, but I'm honest. You left, you made a decision. And so when we aren't okay with our decisions, we try to pretend like things are something different. We're doing ourselves a disservice. We're not living in reality. And we're not living in reality. We are affecting our own mental health. But we're going to try and blame it on others, right? Pointing the fingers. "Oh, you hurt my feelings." I didn't hurt your feelings. I told you the truth. What hurt your feelings is that you didn't want to hear it. Your mental health is not affected by the truth. People say the truth hurts. The truth does not hurt. Your expectations got in the way. We also talk about that in Control the Controllable, which I should probably put a link to Control the Controllable in the show notes. I don't even market it as much as I used to anymore, but I think I've talked about it a couple of times enough here that you need to, if you haven't already taken it, you need to take it. Now it's available when you become a member of the Prosperity Club, and it's available when you take our sneak peek. It comes in our sneak peek, and it's available when you do our presidential experience. And so that's what I'll do. I'll put a link to the sneak peek in the show notes. That includes Prosperity Club. And what it also could include, if you want it includes a conversation with one of our trained hypnotherapists. So that's what I'll do because I feel like at this point, I've talked a lot about me, and I'm going to continue to talk about me because I think that you spend a lot of time with me, but there's so much that you don't know about me, and I don't mind you knowing. I wouldn't say I'm an open book, but if you ask a question, I'm probably going to answer it. I'm not ashamed of most of the things in my life. There's probably one or two things that I'm like, "Ew, probably shouldn't have done that. Don't want nobody to know I did that." But for the most part, I'm pretty proud of the things that I've done, even the mistakes, even the oops, that wasn't the right way to go, but I learned from it. So I said all of that to say, I want you to know more about me, but I also want to know more about you. And you should have a conversation with me or one of my trained hypnotherapists. And that's very possible. I don't take a lot of one on one, I take only a few really dedicated to healing patients each year now. And I've trained other hypnotherapists to work with you. And I found that it's a really powerful way for me to do my work, but also for me to pour into and empower others. Because the work that I do, the things that I know, not a lot of people know them. Financial hypnotherapy is a thing, helping you find your prosperity, helping you look at all areas of your life, your health, your wealth, your adventure, your love, your legacy. Some people, you can go one place for each one of those things, or you can come here and address them all. And just like a doctor's appointment, you're not going to go to a doctor and then do a consultation for free. That's just not the way it works. So if you need healing, you are going to start out by paying for it. If you're not in enough pain to pay for it, that's okay. Wait until you are. Start with the podcast, take the money mentality quiz, come to our pop-up hypnotherapy. But when that pain hits you and you're like, I can't take it anymore, then talk to one of my trained hypnotherapists or talk to me. I love this work. I love healing. And the reason why I do is because I saw how I healed. When I was 15 years old, I went to a church called Christ Universal Temple, and this was in Chicago, and it was led by a woman. Johnny Coleman was her name. And a friend of mine, her grandmother went to this church, and she told me about it. And I was like, wow, a church run by a woman. I never heard of that. And at 15 years old, that meant something to me. I was like, whoa, this woman is different. And she doesn't even care. And she has thousands of people coming to hear her every single week. What is she talking about? I've got to hear her. So I visit the church and I love it, fall in love with it, rise up to leadership in the church. They love me too because I'm an old soul, a wise one. And I just learned so much. But what I learned more than anything at Christ Universal Temple is that prosperity is my birthright. And what else I learned is metaphysics. So every single week we would learn metaphysics. Metaphysics changed my life. And when you learn metaphysics, you take responsibility. And at 15 years old, I learned to take responsibility for me and my actions and what was happening in my life. Does that mean I waved a magic wand and everything happened the way I wanted it to? No, it meant I slowly learned, oh, and if I do this, this happens. And if I do this, this happens. And if I feel this way, this happens. And if I feel that way, this happens. So I just started to investigate, just evaluate. And I was my own case study. And then years in, I got away from it actually. I was a powerful manifester. Like I could go to work when I owned a barbershop, when I used to be a barber. I could go to work, I could say, I'm gonna make $500 today. And then that day I would make $500. Like if you make $500 a day, that's like a good living. So that's a good living, especially for a 20-year-old, a 20 something year old. So I had a good life. I had a certain amount of money. I had good health. I was working three or 4 days a week sometimes and like maxing out my days, working like 10, 12-hour days and then having the other days to just chill. I don't even remember what I did on the other days, but I am so trying to get back to that life. Um, and it was the life. I was so happy back then. And oh, I can tell you what I did. I used to perform poetry. And so I had like this creative side to me. I had the work side to me, corporate running a business, on the weekends, just having fun and performing. I had a band and my band was this group of children. I say children, they were like 18, 19 years old. They weren't even supposed to be in the bar that we were playing in. And it's just that I was okay with being myself. And then somewhere it went away. I think like around 30 after Extreme Makeover, I got away from all the things I knew. And I feel like becoming more human and getting away from my spirit. And I feel like the more human we become, the more hurt we let in. And so I started getting attached into more hurt. And I started allowing it more to come in, my expectations not being met. And that was affecting my mental health. See, your mental health is affected by your story of origin, right? What happens as a kid, that the stuff you just can't control, you have no control over, until you become an adult. After 21, let's just say, you're able to identify, oh, that's the old stuff. That stuff is affecting me. I'm going to have to take control of it. Or you can just let it take control of you. It's in your subconscious brain now, so it will control you, but you've got to identify it. And if you can identify it, then you can get away from it. Just identify it, and then you can move in the opposite direction. And the way you do that is to make an intention of how you want to feel. Get really clear on how you want to feel. And that's what I had been doing, getting really, really clear on how I wanted to feel. And that happened. And once that happened, I started moving back in the other direction. But that didn't happen until like 38. I think like maybe 32 is when I started allowing myself to be more human and just be, broken. And then around 38, I was like, what? This is some BS. Are you kidding me? You know better than this. And then I started moving out of that. 2010, my body was breaking down. My mental health was just completely a mess. And I just, I didn't have a lot of boundaries. I let people take, 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 take. And around 2012, I wrote the book of The Art of Starting Over because I had, and I had the formula. I was like, here's a 30-day step-by-step guide to starting over. Now you don't have to do it in exactly 30 days. You can take your time and you can spread it out for you. But the principles in the book, The Art of Starting Over, which I'll put a link to the book in the show notes. You can get it on Amazon. But the book shows you how to start over. And what you're starting over more than anything is your brain, your mind, because your conscious brain has that mindset stuff. Your subconscious brain has the mentality stuff, and that subconscious brain is guiding you. And so I was vigilant about clearing all the blocks. And I did this for years up into, I mean, I still am doing it, but it was years of clearing and clearing and clearing, clearing all that stuff, clearing. I want my son, clearing, giving her all these possible diagnoses, clearing the fact that, let me tell you, I am one of the smartest people that you would know, but I'm probably dyslexic. I just don't want to claim any of that. I'm probably ADHD, but I'm not claiming that. I'm probably OCPD. Like, a lot of diagnosis could be put on me, but it's no reason to put diagnosis on me, right? Because I'm going to figure out what I want to be, and that is what I'm going to become. Now, somebody out there is saying, but Kanae, you don't know my diagnosis. I don't. I don't. As a therapist, I know that 90%, okay, that's a really high number, but that is 90% of the people I see when I'm looking at my work. 90% of those people are faced with trauma. It is such a low number. The number of people who actually have the diagnosis they give is very low. Maybe 1% of the population is bipolar, but when I worked in the hospital, it felt like everybody who walked in the door was bipolar. Couldn't be that they were traumatized. And so the symptoms of bipolar were showing up because of their trauma. The psychiatrist didn't see it that way. And that was fine. I didn't care. I still used hypnotherapy to heal them. And even though those people who had been back and forth to the hospital in different hospitals all their lives, they were healed after hypnotherapy. And I'm not saying that hypnotherapy is the end all, to be all, the cure. It works for the people I work with. I've not had a patient yet who didn't heal. Every single patient I work with. Some people in one session. Other people need to work with me for 6 months, a year, 2 years. It just all depends on you. It's not about me. And as a therapist, you can believe you're the God of somebody, but you're not. It's about them and their really readiness and what they're willing to release and their resistance. And I don't get a lot of resistance, but the brain resists. That's just the way the brain works. So you just have to decide, am I ready to let go of the trauma? Am I ready to let go of the limiting beliefs? And when I say limiting beliefs, I'm not talking about those superficial things that you hear about on Instagram. I'm talking about those deep down when your mom said, you're not going to be anything anyway. That one that's running in your brain. that's so, so faint that now you don't even hear it, but it's still there. That statement, I want my son, right? Is that running underneath? You just don't feel wanted, accepted, loved, appreciated. Every single time your wife does something that triggers you, it takes you right back to when your father said that thing to you. Every single time. And you're not doing anything about it. You're just letting it happen over and over and over again. Why is that? Why aren't you taking action? Your employees are triggering you. Your business partner, your next door neighbor. And all you have to do is take control of you, but you're not willing because you've been putting energy, effort, focus on all the outside things that don't begin to add up to what you need on the inside. And the truth is, everything you need, you have inside of you already. It's just covered by all the trauma. And that's what's affecting your mental health. Now, I know I said this was about me, and I just made this about you because everything is about you. Same is true for me. Whenever someone is talking to you, you're just thinking about yourself. We're all very self-centered. That's how we stay alive. The brain is self-centered. So what are you going to do? Are you going to stay in pain? And maybe you're not in enough pain. Maybe the pain is a 5 and you need it to be a 9 for you to actually go do something. And that's okay. You can admit that to yourself and wait. Nobody's rushing you. I'm just saying, if you're ready, it's time for you to take the next step. Heal. Heal yourself, especially if you are a healer yourself. If you are touching people, if you are out there in the world doing the work where you are affecting other people, you better go do your work. I am so protective of this industry. My biggest pet peeve is people out there trying to heal the world and they are not healed themselves. Go heal yourself. You will do so much better work if you just heal yourself. You will affect so many more people. If you are mission driven, you have a mission to do something big, significant, make a contribution, change lives, transform people. If this is your mission, transform yourself first. I'll help you. My team and I will. But you won't do it if you're stuck. If you're stuck in some diagnosis that you think you can hide behind. Oh, well, I'm this, and so I can't do that. No, I have this, so I can't accomplish that. Stop it. Stop it right now. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Stop hiding behind your diagnosis. See what's next for you. See what's possible for you. That was the old you. You can move through it slowly. You don't have to rush it. You take your time and you get to the next level because it's possible for you. You know how I know? Because that's how. You thought I was going to say something deep and profound, didn't you? Ha ha! That's what you get. I'm so sorry. It's just like that. So laugh it off. I have to be serious, but I have to be silly sometimes too. That's how we heal. We heal when we can just laugh about it. So just laugh about it. You're so serious because you think death is serious. You think disease is serious. Fun is what's serious. That's what's so serious. Get serious about having some fun. Get serious about laughing. Get serious about enjoying your life. All right? So you can heal yourself mentally. And next week we're going to talk about guilt and greed. I feel like guilt and greed are the same coin, different sides. And I'll tell you why I believe that. And if you've been dealing with kind of toggling between, oh, maybe I should be going after this money. Oh, wait, I feel greedy. Oh, I guess I shouldn't. Oh, wait, I feel guilty. I have so much and they have so little, whatever. You have these like guilt and greed kind of things going on. I'm going to talk to you about it next week. So I'll see you then. Thank you for hanging out with me. It's been so good telling you my story, and kind of journeying with you. And hopefully you saw yourself in something I said and you're ready to go to the next level. And even if you're not ready to go to the next level, you can be ready to go to the next episode next week. Or check our show notes and see if you missed any episodes. Maybe we suggest one in the show notes that you missed and you can check it out. I will see you sooner. In the meantime, have a prosperous week, my Prosperos. Love you muchly. Hey there. I know you want to become a prosperity pro. And one of the ways to do that is to take our money mentality quiz. Now, at Presidential Lifestyle, we call your money personality your money mentality. And we've learned that your money mentality is your money reality, whether you deserve it or not. Now, in my years of clinical practice, I've found there are 7 money mentality types. Do you know your money mentality? Well, you should, because not knowing it could be holding you back from getting to your next level financially. Maybe you're a spender or a saver, or you could be an enthusiast or a hero. Now, I know you may not have heard of the last 2, but if you take the quiz, you'll find out your money mentality. It's easy, fun, and only takes 3 minutes because you already know all the answers. Take the money mentality quiz. It'll help you name your money personality so you can tame your thoughts, feelings, and actions around money. So go ahead, take the quiz. The link is in the show notes, and you might even want to share it with a friend. Thanks for listening all the way to the end, my Prosperity Pro. I want to stay connected with you. Here are 4 ways. Pick the one that works best for you if you want to stay connected with me. 1, if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Send them to podcast@presidentiallifestyle.com. I'd love it if you would make a 1 or 2 minute audio message and attach it to an email. That'd be the easiest way for me to get it. Ask me anything about creating a life of meaning over money, and I'll get you an answer. Remember, the email address is podcast@presidentiallifestyle.com. 2, subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends, because you guys might want to have a discussion about it, especially if they're a CEO who wants to shift from the old American dream to a life of meaning. 3, we try not to have any sponsors on this show unless they are truly in line with our values. I mean, really a good fit. So that means we fund this podcast ourselves. I'd like you to take a look at our resource page to see if there's any products or services that we recommend that are right for you. If not, no worries, maybe later. If so, please use our affiliate link to purchase. Thank you in advance for doing that. You are such an amazing person. Okay, 4 and last. If you want to know what's happening over here at Presidential Lifestyle and you want us to email you the update, then go to presidentiallifestyle.com/blog/now. And you'll see the current updated blog for the week, but you'll also see a link to subscribe to that blog. We can email it to you if you like. That's presidentiallifestyle.com/blog/now. Don't worry, you don't have to remember that link or any links. They're all in the show notes. Oh, and I forgot to say, if you're enjoying this podcast, go ahead and leave us a review and tell us how much you're enjoying it. And now for the legalese. This podcast is not to replace professional counsel. The best advice is from a professional who knows you and your specific situation. The topics discussed in this podcast are general in nature and for informational or entertainment purposes only. We encourage you to meet with a professional that you can discuss your specific situation with. Whether you choose us or someone else, one-on-one counsel is important, whether it's a financial, therapeutic, legal, or other decision. So that's all for now. I'll see you next episode. And remember, you can have wealth in all of its forms. Believe it, and you'll soon see.